Countries around the world, including the UK and Australia, are planning to introduce insects in school lunches. Now, it's important to note that humans eating bugs and insects is nothing new. In fact, according to an FAO report, 2 billion people currently eat them. That's a quarter of the world's population. But because eating crickets and mealworms never really took off in the West, scientists are hoping they can change that for a very interesting reason, I must admit. Recently, 200 students across multiple schools in Wales were fed bug bolognese in efforts to encourage them and their parents to move away from meat. 1,000 schools in Australia are now being fed insects in the forms of cricket crisps. Pretty tame for Australia. Over in Denver, USA, kids tested out cookies made with cricket flour. In Canada, parents were advised by food columnists to pack bugs in their children's school lunches, and the list goes on. Now, the reason there's a push for us to incorporate insects into our diet is because, quite simply, studies suggest that it's way better for the environment. Insect farms, yes, apparently that's a thing, claim that they generate 96% less emissions than livestock farms. Bugs and insects would give the world almost an unlimited amount of food as they reproduce extremely fast. Insect farms don't require a lot of land and water, if any. They're high in protein. They pretty much look after themselves, and there's 1,900 edible insect species. Sounds fantastic, but the only problem is pleh. The cost of living crisis has got so bad in the UK. Turns out it's now actually cheaper to go on a 5-star all-inclusive holiday for an entire month than it is to stay at home. An EasyJet operator worked out the average cost of living for Brits, which they say came to £877. However, they also have a holiday package to a 5-star resort, which includes flights, all-inclusive meals, snacks, drinks, alcohol, spa, gym, Wi-Fi, etc. for £650. And no, this is not an ad, just a warning that Rashid Sunak better sort this shit out. Some of the biggest nuclear escalations are happening right now. In a recent phone call, Russia's defense minister warned the UK, US, and France that they have reason to believe that Ukraine is planning a false flag operation which involves detonating a nuclear dirty bomb, which releases radioactive material on themselves in order to blame it on Russia. The idea would be that this would force NATO to have to physically step in and launch a countermeasure against Russia because nuclear weapons were used. But after a day of deliberation, the UK, US, and France released this joint statement rejecting these claims as false, and that Russia were using these allegations as a pretext to escalate attacks on Ukraine. But now it's come out that Russia is doubling down on these claims and are bringing it to the UN Security Council today. The UN nuclear watchdog is now preparing to send inspectors to 2 Ukrainian sites at Kiev's request. Washington warned Russia that there would be severe consequences for any nuclear use, and Russia warned them back, saying, "We will regard the use of the dirty bomb by the Kiev regime as an act of nuclear terrorism." Now, this is all developing as we speak, so of course I'll make sure to keep you guys updated. Nobody is paying attention to it, but in our lifetime, we could see Africa either fall to pieces or become one of the most dominant continents on the planet. You see, Africa's population is absolutely booming right now, while Europe and Asia's are shrinking. UNICEF predicts that 2 billion babies will be born in Africa in just the next 33 years, more than doubling their population. In fact, by 2050, Nigeria is predicted to become the 3rd largest country on the planet, overtaking the US. And experts predict that this incredible growth could either go beautifully right or horribly wrong. Now, in the good scenario, the population growth follows something similar to what happened to China. A growing workforce, innovation, the lifting of hundreds and millions out of poverty, and subsequently an economic boom. And we're actually seeing the beginning of this starting right now. In 2019, the top 5 fastest growing economies in the entire world were all African. And because of this potential, major global economic players are scrambling to invest in their future. China, in particular. They have now overtaken the US to become the world's largest foreign direct investor in Africa. And if you look at this chart, which shows the growth in a region's working age population, the future is Africa's for the taking. However, the bad scenario is that, number one, most African economies are still fragile, meaning that if something big happens, like a virus outbreak or a war, these countries are hit particularly hard, which is exactly what happened to them in the last 2 years. The other potential is that their population explodes, but that doesn't translate into economic growth, mostly because of things like poor leadership, bad choices, corrupt governments, and the list goes on. They will have double the population, but still the same supply of food and housing, which obviously would be catastrophic. So the question is, which scenario do you see playing out for Africa? China has been secretly recruiting former British military pilots in order to help them train members of the Chinese military. The BBC is reporting that the ex-British pilots are being used to help understand the way in which Western planes and pilots operate. Information which could be vital in the event of any conflict, such as over Taiwan. Some of the packages are thought to be as much as £237,000. And it's not even just the UK. Australian and American pilots have also been reported to have been approached. At least 146 people have just died and hundreds more have been injured at a Halloween festival in South Korea's capital. Reports are coming out that a couple 100,000 people packed in the streets for Halloween when a crowd surge sparked down a narrow street as thousands rushed to see a celebrity at a local bar. Horrifying images from the scene shows desperate individuals scaling the sides of buildings as they try and escape from this screaming crowd. Bodies can be seen scattered across the street as the people they came out with are performing CPR, and body bags lined up on the road as emergency authorities are warning that the death toll is likely to grow. As soon as more information is released, I'll make an update.